Well, hey, good morning, everybody. How you doing? And it's a beautiful, wow, really sunny, bright Monday. No, Sunday. No, what day is it? Oh, this is so good. So this coffee mug, actually, I've been drinking out of almost every morning for the last 12 years or so. This was a gift actually from an exchange student from the Czech Republic, and I love this thing. It was kind of a short night. I had to wake up bright and early to run my rig to the mechanic to get some work done on the brakes. And we're hitting it early, making some tutorials. It's a beautiful, wow, crazy sunny day here in Montana. And for today's tutorial, what I want to do is actually more of a Q&A. So I've got a bunch of students in a membership group. You can check it out at derrickmitchell.com. And she sent me a message on Slack with a magazine cover she's working on, just wanting some feedback. So what we're going to do is take a look at this magazine cover and look at some ways that it's working well, and look at how I would approach the design myself, as well as some things that we could do to improve this overall. So we're going to go ahead and dive in. All right, so let's go ahead and take a look at this. So here is the cover that she sent, and it's a great start. There's a lot of things that I think are working well, and there's also some things that we're going to definitely want to improve on. So we're just going to start top down. And the first thing that I notice is there's three things that are competing for your visual attention. The first is the masthead across the top, the fatherly logo, or what we call the masthead, and we've got that in red letters, bold at the top. Then one thing you wouldn't really think about, but this architecture, this building here is very unique, and because of its size, it's really commanding a lot of attention on the page. And then we have the father and son here down below. Now, as you probably already know, anytime you have a person or, a face on the cover of anything, as humans, our eyes tend to get drawn towards their faces. We're trying to read into their eyes and trying to decipher as much information as we can from the photo. So we've got this big red text, this big building, and then we've got faces all competing for your first attention. So what's a little bit confusing with this cover is when we zoom in close and look at this thing, you can tell that it's obviously been kind of cut out and placed in this image. So what I would do is make it much bigger. And so let's go ahead and look at some other magazine covers for inspiration. We're gonna jump up here into Safari. We got some magazine covers. All right, so if we look at these, there's really a couple approaches. One is you've got some covers where the masthead goes above the image and is always above the image, like Time magazine down here always has the Time logo over the forehead of the people on the cover. And then you've got some magazines here like Forbes where you have this cutout where the head pops in front of it. Actually, here's one where Time did that as well. So it just kind of depends on the look you're going for, but by doing something like that, you'll notice most of these images are substantially larger on the cover and not quite so small down here in the bottom. Okay, so that's one thing I would do, is I would bring up the main image much larger. Now to do that, this image looks kind of grainy, so you definitely want to start with a good image to begin with. Now this is the cover, so you should be able to find high quality photos for the cover of whatever you're doing. And if you don't have one, you need to make sure you get one, because it's the first impression you're dealing with. So what I'm going to do is go ahead and let's just make a new, actually I'm just going to build over the top of this one. So this is just an image I brought into Photoshop. So we're just going to build over the top, and let's just pretend like, let's start with a better image. So I'm going to come back here, and I already did a search for father and son here at pexels.com. This is a good one. We'll explore. I'm just going to download this one. We'll do that. Let me scroll down a little bit. Here's another good one. This one's awesome. It's got some character. He's smiling. They're having fun. That's another thing too. Like, what is the story telling you on the face? What's the facial expression? So that's really important as well. The nice thing about this one, where their backs are to us, it makes it a little more ambiguous to where it could be anybody. It might be more relational to somebody, as far as your target demographic is able to relate to that person. Let's go ahead and scroll through here just a little bit more. Now what I'm looking for, here's a good one. Although his eyes are kind of closed, it's a little blurry. Let's find another one here. What I'm looking for now is, so the one that we have here, it's a little more, they're side by side. The one that I downloaded, they're stacked vertical, so that actually could be good for the layout of this magazine. Let's just see here. We've got these two. We'll go ahead and work with these for now. All right, so first things first, let's go ahead and drag these images in here just to get them started. It'll scale it up. All right. All right, so we got that one in here, and I'm just going to bring the other one in while we're at it. All right. So we got some really good photos to work with. Now this one already works really well. It's got some nice negative space around the edges where I could drop in some text. And the one below it, actually same thing. It's nice and dark. And I actually like this one better because the trees behind it have some darker areas that we can drop some text in over the top. This one is nice, but there's some really hot spots down here where it's kind of blown out. So I would either want to maybe cut him out or select it and darken the background. But if we're trying to work with just the photo, this one might get us there better. So we've got that. Now the next thing I want to look at is just the amount of fonts we have on here. So we've got a sans serif font up here. We've got the main masthead, which is another font. So there's 2 fonts. This one looks like it's different than this one. So we're gonna call it 3 fonts. So we've got all these, and then we've got this font here, 4. So it's pretty busy with fonts. So we want to try and narrow that down and make sure that we only have, 2, 3 fonts max to try and keep it from being too busy. The next thing that I see is we've got this lowercase kerned out, right? Tracked out. And so for me, I would typically try and keep your lowercase letters with regular kerning or tracking, because we don't want it to, I don't know, for me, it just feels like everything's really stretched out. So let's go ahead and play with this a little bit more. All right, so for the sake of working fast, what I'm gonna do is actually select the fatherly text. Let's go ahead and sample this color. I'm gonna actually use the magic wand tool, and I want to sample, I'm gonna turn off contiguous. What that means is it's any color that it sees in this entire layer. It doesn't have to be touching. All right, so I'm going to click on that, and now pretty much just the fatherly text is selected with a little bit down here in this jersey. So now I'm going to hit the letter M to get my rectangular marquee, and hold on the Option key to click and drag to remove the selection from here. So now I have just the fatherly text. I've got a new blank layer up here, and I'm going to hit the letter I to get my eyedropper tool, and we're going to sample this color. Oh, I gotta be on the right layer. Here we go. I want back to all layers. Sample that layer. Now we've got that maroon burgundy color. And I'm going to turn off this layer behind it just to make sure I've got other selections cleaned up here. We've got some extra pixels here, so we're just gonna remove that from my selection. Hit Option Delete to fill with my foreground color, and now I've got this fatherly text right on top. I know we're working fast and loose here, but so now we've got this that we can work with, and let's go ahead and bring in that image that we were going to play with here. We'll drop this in, scale it up, and maybe even crop quite a bit here. Throw this behind the masthead. Now, you're going to have to decide on, as far as the text here, it's difficult to see. So if your publication always has the same color, you might have to change how you work with things. But what I'm going to do is actually change this to be white. So I'm going to lock the pixels on this layer. What that does is now I can fill this with a foreground color of white. I'll hit Option Delete, and it's going to fill just any pixel data. So by locking this right here, it's going to lock transparent pixels, so that way you can't fill anything that's transparent. I hope that makes sense. It's a really great shortcut you can use for just about anything. All right, so we've got that there. Now I'm going to throw a mask on this layer, and let's see how Photoshop does. I'm going to actually try going to Select, and we're going to go to Select Subject, and just see how Photoshop does, if it can see this photo. It does a pretty stinking good job. So we're going to go ahead and run with that selection and maybe clean it up a tiny bit. I'm going to hit the letter Q to get my quick mask tool going. Hit letter B to get my brush. And let's make sure we're painting with a nice soft brush here. We are. All right. And I'm just going to clean this up quick. We don't want to get too crazy with our selection just right now. Just trying to get through this tutorial. Let's see here. And actually, I don't even need to make sure, I only need to make sure that this selection up here is good. So let's turn that quick mask mode back off real quick. And selecting hair, especially on this background, can get real tricky. So let's turn this off and just kind of take a look at this. Let's go ahead and I'm just going to add to this selection with my lasso tool just to kind of get it a little bit better here, get it close at least. All right. Just cleaning things up. And I'm not too worried in this case. Here's the deal. We're just trying to make it mask behind the letters here. So realistically, all I need to make sure that's good is right where he would pop in front of these letters. So I don't need to worry too much about the selection, but what I'm going to do is come up here with my selection, like my lasso tool selected, and click select and mask. And now what I can do is paint over with my refine brush. Let's see, quick selection tool, the refine edge brush. And we're just going to try and let Photoshop work its magic here. And we're just trying to make it look realistic right where those letters are. So I'm not going to get too picky about the rest of this, but we're kind of getting it close, just trying to make Photoshop do most of the heavy lifting here. We'll click OK. We'll call it good for now. And now what I'm going to do is jump cut this selection to a new layer actually. And I can bring this text behind that other layer. I should have worked with a mask, but I'm just trying to go fast here, guys. So what we're going to do is just take a look at that. And that actually did a pretty stinking good job of knocking that behind the text. And what I like about this is it just creeps up just a little bit beyond the letters, but you can still read most of the text. It's cropped well. He's looking into the letters here, and it really engages the viewer. All right, so now what I'm going to do is let's just go ahead and look at the original real quick. And you can see that we've got a lot of different stories, and we could easily feature all of them. But what I'm going to do is just grab a couple of them. So we've got our Parenting 101. And maybe we'll just kind of play with some sizing here. And we're just going to do a regular sans serif. Just, I don't know. We'll figure something out here. Now, instead of leaving this, I'm just going to make this all caps. And I'm going to cut this, Command X to cut it, drag down a copy of this text. The reason why I'm doing this is because I want to be able to just quickly grab and select these. So let's drop this down here. I want a little more space on the right hand side here. So what I'm going to do is select, we've got this layer sitting on top. I'm going to select this one and the original image below it, and we're just going to drag it over a little bit, which is nice that we've got the selection and the two layers sitting on top, because now we can just move it and it's going to knock out those letters wherever we drop it. So I'm just thinking we're going to scoot it over just a little bit. So that way we've got the left edge just barely, touching over here. We've got a little bit of margin, a little bit of space, but that gave me more space down the right-hand side to kind of work with this here. So let's go. And again, I like to break my text into a couple layers, because then I can really refine my type in a way that feels a little more natural, just to grab whichever one that I want and scale it into place without having to try and mess with the whole line at a time. All right. Hope that makes sense, guys. It's not even 7 yet. I'm needing more coffee here. All right, there we go. That's looking good. That's better. That's cool. All right, so I like how this works. It fits in this gap here. Parenting 101. Let's see, what else could we grab? Let's go back to the original cover. Kids' mental health, signs to look out for. All right, let's drop that in here. So, all right, we're using the same font, but I'm going to change. So we're within the font family, we've got some different weights. So I'm going to change this to regular, just to kind of change this up a bit, but still keep it within the same font family. And I'm playing with the guide down the right-hand side here, the alignment, just to make this all look like it belongs together. And maybe let's add one more story to this. So bond over sports, fun activities to do with your kids. So bond over sports is nice in this magazine cover because we've actually got some sports happening here in the background. But in the image that I threw on this cover, obviously there's no sports, but it looks like they're having a fun activity. So what we're going to do is grab fun activities to do with your kids. And I'm just going to clone this. All right, so let's see how this lines up here. All right, and I'm going to align this to the right, kind of getting that flush right design layout here. And I'm going to call that good for the sake of this tutorial. So actually, let's cancel that. There. All right, so that is what we ended up with for the design. Now, what I want to point out here on this compared to the original, let's go ahead and pull up the original real quick. So again, with the original, we had a lot of stuff going on. We've got some, the colors. This yellow stands out, but it doesn't really borrow any color from the photo. We've got this maroon color on the top. We've got this, kind of a lot going on. And I think that it's important to remember that you can really simplify things and break it down to the base, the very basics. In this case, all of my fonts are white, all my text is white, and I'm really letting the image pop through on this. Now I could, if I wanted to, maybe sample some color. So for example, I see we've got this kid's shorts, maybe we try and borrow that color. Let's just see if it works if I sample from the image. That's not bad. So by sampling a color directly from the image, it helps it tie in. It gives you a little bit of something to work with, but everything still feels like it belongs together, and makes it feel cohesive and on purpose. With this other cover, I feel like there's, I don't see anywhere else in the image where this yellow color comes from, and it just kind of feels like there's a lot going on. So I hope that helps. Overall, really great approach. Just tightening up some things like those fonts and keeping everything. Literally, we have two fonts. We've got the masthead, and then we've got this main font here in Open Sans. We're just using bold, and I think we're using light here just to make it stand out a little bit, and that's everything. Like, that's all we did. We kept it really, really simple. I hope that helps. I know a little bit scattered today. I've got some flies flying around in my office. I've got the sun in my eyes. Barely had any coffee yet, but that's really important to me to try and get back to the students who are asking me those questions in that Q&A. Don't forget to check out the website at derrickmitchell.com, where you can check out that Vault membership if you want to join in and want to be able to get direct access to me and be able to ask questions like this where I can get back to you. And don't forget, if you like the video, hit the like button down below, subscribe, tap the bell, all the things, and stay tuned for the next tutorial rolling out on Friday. This makes me so happy though. That's good coffee. So early. Oh my gosh, I need like 4 more of those. I'm so tired.